Hello friends, welcome to my channel. In this video series, we are mostly going to talk about how to set up a lab environment for your config manager or MECM environment. So if you are like me and if you wanted to set up an environment for testing purpose on your computer where you can download and test some of the latest features of SCCM or MECM, both are one by the way, you can tag along. So remember, in this video series we'll be focusing mostly on the features of SCCM and not that much on the server side of Active Directory, things like that. However, in order to have a Windows infrastructure, we will go through some of the steps that's required to sort of create a domain and associated services. So let's start with installation of a Windows 2019 server environment. Now in my lab, I'm setting it up on a VMware Fusion environment. So let me start by creating a new virtual machine. I will use a custom virtual machine, and as mentioned, I'm going to use Windows Server 2019 environment because that's like the latest. Yes, I will use the UEFI mode, and I will not use secure boot for now, but again, in corporate environment it is recommended to use the secure boot. Create a new virtual disk, yes, hit continue. Let me customize settings. So here it allows me to give a name. I will just put in some name. And hit save. Now at this point my VM is almost ready to be built. I will just look upon some more settings that I have here. Most important is the network adapter. So I will leave it at share with my Mac. That's all right. And next I will sort of mount or attach the Windows 2019 installation CD into it, so that when it starts booting, and I will show you how to make that change here. So yeah, here we are setting up the CD DVD as the boot priority. So whenever it boots up from that CD. Okay. Is there anything I want to do in advance? No, I will leave it at that. Right on. So that's about it. And time to start the VM. Let's see what happens. Now it should try to boot from that CD and ask us to select the options that we are trying to build the VM with. Let's see what happens here. Okay, so for some reasons it seems it tried to boot up and it did not find any media. Can we reset it? So let's restart it. And this time here we are going to click OK. So it's loading files. So if you have worked on Windows Server environment, and if you have sort of created domains and Active Directory environment, then this is not going to be any different for you, at least from the initial initial installation that I've done for Windows Server 2019. It seems pretty much the same way it used to be for 2016 environment. For more clarity, let me take you through the steps. Alright, so this is the very first screen that comes up when we try to boot it using the Windows installation CD. Like I said earlier, it is very similar to how it used to show up in the previous versions as well. Language to select, United States English, time and currency format United States English, and keyboard format is United States as well. So I hit next. And I click on install now. It says setup is starting. Now remember, this is just an evaluation CD I downloaded from Microsoft's website. This is Windows Server 2019 standard, and we are going to install it with full desktop experience, and I'll show you where that option is to select the kind of experience you want to have. And it's right here. So we are not going to try and evaluate a data center license or data center flavor. We are going to evaluate the Windows Server 2019 with desktop experience. Click on next. Let's select the license agreements. Click on next. We are not upgrading, we are simply installing, so select next. I only have one drive of 60 GB, so that's fine. We don't need to do further partitions. And as I'm using a VM, if need be, I can attach more disk and storage at a later point in time, but for now I'll leave it at that. And this is where it starts installing, it starts scoping files, and basically from here on you don't need to do anything. It will just finish it really fast. Now since I have done it already for another virtual machine right here, so let me take you straight away to that machine and we can begin installing our domain controller, our very first domain controller. So right, so using the steps we were seeing just a short while back, we get something like this. Again, it's the server manager. I believe all of you are already familiar with what a server manager is, and it's a Windows Server 2019 standard evaluation, as we just spoke about. Now the things that I've done on this VM so far is, as you can see, I've already renamed it. If you want to learn how to rename server, you can just go to computer name, click on change, give it a name, hit enter. I'm not going to do it right now because it will then ask me to restart it again, which I don't want. I have turned off the Windows firewall, and that was necessary because I needed to take RDP of this server session, and also I've given it a static IP. So in order to do that, we can simply click on the IP address mentioned here. It will take you to the a network configuration. Go to properties, I try to keep the IPv6 disabled or not selected. So just go to IPv4, click on properties, and this is where exactly you can set the IP address. Now my network is on 192.168.189, and so that's the IP address. This is one of the IP addresses I have given from that subnet. So looks like I'm all set to start installing the domain controller. So I go to the dashboard, I click on Add Roles and Features. Click on Next. Select role-based feature-based installation. Click on Next. Select a server from the server pool. We only have this server. Click on Next. And here you need to select Active Directory Domain Services. As soon as you select that, a pop-up is going to come something like that. Add feature. Keep rest of the settings as default. Click on Next. Sorry. Right here, we are not selecting the .NET 3.5, and we are going to leave all the default settings as it is. And we are going to click on Next. Let's say the Active Directory Domain Service, it gives information about what it does. One more thing that I usually do before starting to install a domain controller is on the server where I'm actually trying to set up the domain controller. Right, so on the server where I'm actually trying to install the domain controller, and if it is the first domain controller of the environment, I try to create another user. So as you would see, administrator is the default user, and I've created another user just in case my password is lost or I lose the capability to log in using an administrator account. I just create another account and I add it as a member of the local administrator. So this really gives me sort of a fail-safe in case something goes wrong during the installation and I lose the administrator account. So we are here and we are clicking Next. I will select this option that says restart the destination server automatically if required. Click on Next and click on Install. Now this will kickstart the installation. As we see, the feature installation part has just completed. So we will continue this video from here. So as you see, the installation has been successful. I'll click on Close. And as we see, there is a notification mark right here, and that's because although we have managed to install the Active Directory Domain Services feature successfully on this server, we are yet to promote this server as a domain controller. And that's what we are going to do now. So click on this highlighted part which says promote this server as a domain controller, and that will try to open another wizard. So what basically this wizard is asking is what kind of deployment operation do I want? Do I want to add this domain controller to an existing domain, or I want to add a new domain controller to an existing forest? I would rather add this as a new forest. So let me give it a name. Because this is a lab, I've just given it a very simple name, vjxl.local. Now click on Next. Right, so this is my lab environment, and this is basically the first server, first domain controller. So I will leave the forest functional level and domain functional level at default. I will provide a DSRM or Directory Service Restore Mode password, one which is easy for me to remember. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with what a DSRM password is, uh, it is sort of a backdoor entry into your database. So if something goes wrong and you lose access to your Active Directory using this password and ntds util, which is a command line tool, this provides administrator with sort of a backdoor to the database. That's what I can say for now. Let's click on next. We are not going to select this option because we don't want to make any delegation with the public intranet. So we click on public internet, I'm sorry. So we click on next. Now here comes the part where it will verify the NetBIOS name assigned to the domain, and it picks it up automatically, which is good. So I click on next. And let it populate further settings for database folder, log files folder, and sysvol folder. Now, of course, this is a test environment, so I will leave it at default, but in your enterprise, you can always select the right location where you have enough storage and permissions. Click on next. Review the options. One of the things we did not discuss is about DNS servers. So yes, we do want to create this as a DNS server, and rest of the options looks just fine. So click on next. Okay, so here comes our very first error of this lab. It says one or more prerequisite failed, and what is it failing at? It says verification of prerequisite domain controller promotion failed. DNS services are required. So it seems like when we install it, we somehow missed installing the DNS client. Let us just cancel this completely. Go back to add roles and features and see if we have the DNS installed. If not, then we will attempt to install DNS services right now. So again, select the same server, click on next, and select the DNS server. There it is. Add feature. Click on next and let it install. Alright, so we have got the DNS feature installed. Let me close this one and let's go back to trying to promote this as a domain controller. Remember, we had to exit out of this visit earlier because of an error. Errors are good actually. If it occurs in a test environment, it's much better because then you know what went right and what went wrong, and gives you an opportunity to ensure that you learn better and do less errors in actual production environment. So again, I'm going to specify a domain name. Click on next. Okay, so I give it a proper name this time, bgxl.local. Click on next. I leave it at default and then I give it a DSRM password. I have already explained what a DSRM password is, and I select the DNS and global catalog. Click on next. I do not want to make a delegation, and I'm hoping it would still populate my domain name from the NetBIOS, and There it is. Leave it at default. Click on next. And let's see what happens this time when it's doing a prerequisite check. Alright, so this time it says all prerequisite check passed successfully. I can click on install to begin installation of the domain controller, and it says starting. Now we can see it's going through its steps of creating a directory partition, and basically it is forming a schema. So the server was successfully configured as a domain controller, and soon as the installation or promotion of domain controller was completed, this server went for a restart already, and now it's coming back. So we will see if we are able to notice any differences when the server comes back up and we are able to log in. Right on, so it's back now, and as I mentioned, the first thing we notice here is it's not logging in locally as an administrator. In fact, it's trying to log in with a domain account. So let's try to log in with the same account, which is now, of course, as it seems, is a member of a domain VJXL. And let's see what we got here. Okay, so I'm able to log in with my domain credentials. Okay, so yeah, obviously we see some differences. We see here, rather than a workgroup computer, it is now actually a domain that it is a part of. Also, honestly, if you noticed, I did not take an RDP. I connected through console, and that's because I wasn't sure whether I would find the firewall as off or on state, and similarly whether I would find the remote management and remote desktop as enabled or disabled, and that's why I couldn't take a chance whether my remote RDP would connect or not. But it seems like it has retained the settings which I did before promoting it as domain controller, so that's fine. Let's go ahead and explore this further. Let's see what we got under Active Directory users and computer. Now, as many of you would already know, Active Directory users and computers is actually a representation of a container where the domain users and domain computers are saved. So right, so it has a good look. It says vjxl.local. Let's see what we got under computer. Most probably nothing, which is fine because so far we have not added any computer to this domain. We should at least find one domain controller. There you go. That is it, and that is exactly the domain controller we are logged in right now. If we go under users, we should find one administrator, which is like the default built-in administrator, and we also find a local user that we created before this machine was promoted as a domain controller. Let's see if this user is a member of any of the groups. So under, okay, so this is in fact because we added this user as a member of the local administrator group on the domain controller, it has retained that membership, and along with administrator user, this has now become a member of the administrator group. Along with that, we will notice there are several other groups that are like default groups created during the installation of a domain, and these are meant for several different purposes. So alright, we will close this one now, and we will go to DNS. Right, so DNS is one of the most essential features of Active Directory. And if we expand the forward lookup zones here, we see we already have a zone named based on our domain VGXL. What we are going to do is we are going to create a new zone under reverse lookup. So again, most of you would already be familiar with what is a forward lookup and what is a reverse lookup, meaning if I have a computer which is attached to vgxl.local and if I ping that computer, let's say abcd .vgxl.local, it would start giving me the IP address. But at this point, if I just ping the IP address of that hypothetical computer which was attached to this domain, it would not give me any information about the host name, and that's why we are going to create a reverse lookup zone here. So I want to retain it as my primary. I want this to replicate to all DNS servers. It's a IPv4, and I need to provide a network ID. Like I said earlier, I'm on 192.168.189 network. Stick to the first option. In fact, let me select that option as well, and that's how we complete the reverse lookup zone creation. We just have one more thing to do, and that is to configure this zone now. So we try to create a new pointer here, and we basically browse to our domain controller. Okay, so seems like I cannot find my domain controller name here, and that's because I made a mistake. I made a mistake while creating this reverse lookup zone. It does not have the network ID of my subnet, so I will create another reverse lookup zone, and this time I will give the proper network ID. So 192.168.189, and I will click on finish. Let's see what happens when we try to create a PTR record here. There it is. So now we have completed the DNS configuration, and at this point our domain controller installation is also complete. So in another videos or following videos, we'll try to create more servers, more workstations, and we will join them to this domain. So basically, for the purpose of setting up the SCCM lab, the domain that we needed, it's right here and it's functioning. So we will use it next time. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for more videos. Thank you.